everyone, and welcome back to the class. So today we're going to sit with you and teach you how to adjust your insulin if you're taking insulin 3 times a day. So this video is specifically for those of you who are taking a short-acting insulin before breakfast, before lunch, and a pre-mixed insulin before dinner. So if you're not sure if this video applies to you or not, sit with us with your prescription and then we can tell you which insulin dose adjustment video is suitable based on the type of insulin you're taking. Now, how do you actually know how to adjust insulin? Well, you can only adjust insulin when you check your blood sugar levels. So can you get up in the morning and say, okay, my hair is looking perfect today, my face is looking great today? Well, you can't. The only way you know that is when you stand in front of the mirror, you comb your hair, do your makeup, then you look at yourself and you smile and say, okay, I'm all set and I'm good to get out of the house and go to work. So how do you know that your health is okay, that your sugars are normal? It's only when you check your blood sugars that you really know that the blood sugar is under normal range. When you don't check your sugar, you're really just guessing. So please keep a glucometer at home because everyone on insulin or even otherwise needs to check their blood sugars on a regular basis. Now, how often to check, at what time to check? Well, we'll cover all of that in this video. If you still have doubts at the end of the video, come back and sit with us and we'll be glad to answer all of your questions. Now, if you're pregnant or if you're planning pregnancy, the targets that we've discussed in this video do not apply to you. So please sit with us again one-on-one to know what your individual targets are. And then you can use the same guidelines to adjust insulin to reach your goal. And everyone's blood sugar goal is going to be slightly different. So good luck getting there, and let's get back to school now to get back to math. See you soon.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the video on insulin adjustment. So in this video, we're going to teach you how to adjust insulin at home, provided you're taking the insulin regimen explained here. So this video covers 3 insulin injections a day and can help you adjust insulin if you're taking a short-acting insulin before breakfast, before lunch, and pre-mixed insulin before dinner. So if you're not sure what insulin you're taking exactly, and if this video applies to you or not, sit with the doctor and learn from them how to adjust insulin at home. So what do we mean by a short-acting insulin? How do you know if you're taking a short-acting insulin? Well, you can check your prescription. These are the common short-acting insulins available in the market. We also call short-acting insulins as mealtime insulins or bolus insulins. So these are several brand names: Actrapid, Insulin R, Huminsulin R, Insulin Rapid, NovoRapid, Fiasp, Apidra, Humalog, Eglucin Rapid. So what you will be doing is taking a short-acting insulin before breakfast and before lunch. So if that's what your prescription says, then you know that you can watch this video. Your prescription should also say that you're taking a pre-mixed insulin before dinner to learn dosage adjustments from this video. So what do we mean by pre-mixed insulin? Well, check the name of your insulin and it should have this number written next to it. So it'll have 3070 or 2575 or 5050. So the insulin name may be Mixtard or Insugen 3070 or Huminsulin 3070 or 5050, Novomix 3070, 5050, Insulin Combo 2575, Humalog Mix maybe 2575 or 5050, Eglucin 2575, 5050. So next to the name of the insulin, you should find this number written on it. So what does this number mean? It means 30% or 25% or 50% is a fast-acting, short-acting insulin, and the rest of it, 70%, 75% or 50% is a longer acting insulin. So we'll see how this works exactly in the next couple of slides. But before that, when should you inject insulin? Well, again, this depends on which insulin you're taking. So it slightly varies. Some insulins work a little faster and some work a little bit slower. So look at your prescription and follow what it says. So if you're taking human insulin, you need to inject it 30 minutes before your meal. whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner. But if you're taking an analog insulin, it can be injected 10 to 15 minutes before your meal. So as I mentioned, there are several brands available in the market. So stick to your prescription or ask the doctor to find out based on which insulin you're taking. They'll be able to tell you whether you need to take it 15 minutes before food or half an hour before food. So how does your insulin work when you're taking insulin 3 times a day? So let's take a look at this. So what you do is you take a short-acting insulin before breakfast. It starts working about half an hour later. So as the blood sugars go up after your breakfast, the insulin levels also go up. So here it starts to control your post-breakfast blood sugars or your PPBS. And then gradually the insulin levels come down and it finishes its work by about lunchtime. So you could say that it approximately works for about 6 hours. Would you do the rest of the day? Well, of course, you take another dose of short-acting insulin or bolus insulin before your lunch. Again, you see here, the injection timing is 15 or 30 minutes before your lunch, but the insulin doesn't work immediately. It starts working a little bit later, so it starts working about half an hour later. Then the insulin goes up, covers your sugars after lunch, and then gradually the insulin levels drop. So when you take a short-acting injection in the morning, it works for about 6 hours from breakfast to lunch. And you take another injection before lunch, it starts to work at lunchtime, and then it works evening. So it covers you the rest of your evening till dinner. So what do you do in the night again? Well, you need to take another shot to cover you through the night. So you take the premixed insulin before dinner. And what happens in the premixed insulin? Some part of it, if it's 50-50, 50%, or if it's 30-70, 30%, some part of it works to cover your sugars after dinner. And then the rest of it works a little bit more slowly and it covers you through the rest of the night till your breakfast the next day. So you can think of this as insulin working in 3 shifts. So if you have a security guy at home to take care of your apartment, so the guy who comes in the morning covers you till lunch, the guy who comes and takes care of your house in the afternoon takes care of your house till evening, and then he goes back, and the security guard who comes in the evening stays through the night and does a 12-hour shift. So this is exactly how insulin works. What I wanted to also mention earlier, which I forgot to, which I will stress on now, is the timing of the insulin injections. There are a few newer insulin analogs available, like fast-acting aspart, which we call as FIAS, which can be taken just before eating, or sometimes can even be taken after food. So depending on your day-to-day schedule, what you can afford, and your blood sugar levels, how long your insulin needs to work, your doctor will decide which insulin regimen you need and also which type of insulin you actually need. So if you look at insulin working in shifts, the morning insulin works for about 6 hours. The afternoon insulin again works for about 6 hours. The night insulin does a 12-hour shift. The duration of action of insulin slightly varies based on which insulin you're actually taking. We can use the same principles that we're going to explain in this video to adjust insulin. So which sugars should you check once you get back home? So we want you to check your fasting blood sugar, sugars after breakfast, so 1.5 hours after breakfast, and your sugars after lunch, so 1.5 hours after lunch. So these are the 3 sugars that we're going to check to adjust insulin. So how often should you check your sugars? So we want you to check your sugars as often as possible. At least twice a week would be very good, but if you can do it even alternate days, that would be excellent. Sometimes some people even check it every day, and that is textbook, and that would be great. So the more you check, the better it is. The more you adjust insulin, it helps you stay in your blood sugar target range for a greater amount of time. So the better your sugars are, lesser the risk of complications in the future. So remember, your glucometer is a mirror to your health. The more you check and adjust insulin, really the better it is for you. But of course, we also want you to check at any time when you have low sugar symptoms. So not just stick to these 3 times, so fasting after breakfast, after lunch, but anytime you have a low, please check your sugars. And also check your sugars after dinner once in a week, once in 10 days. So you get an idea of what it is through the night as well. So what are normal blood sugar values? So we want our fasting blood sugar value to be between 71 and 120. Anything more than 120 is high and anything under 70 is low. After breakfast or after lunch, we want the blood sugar values to be above 71 and under 180. This is normal. More than 180 is high and below 71, even equal to 70 is a low blood sugar value. So how do you adjust insulin at home? So remember, let's start off with the fasting. So let's first control and fix the fasting blood sugar, then worry about after breakfast, after lunch. So early morning when you check your sugar, the only insulin acting at that time is your previous day and night's insulin injection. So you haven't taken the morning insulin yet. So your insulin in the previous night is working for 12 hours, and that's the one that controls your fasting blood sugar. So if your fasting blood sugar is normal, it means the insulin that you've taken in the night is sufficient for you. If your fasting blood sugar is more, it means the insulin you've taken the previous night is not enough. If your fasting is low, or if you have a low sugar at any time in the night, it means the previous night dose of insulin was a little bit more for you. What about the sugars after food? So after breakfast, the sugars are controlled with your morning bolus insulin or short-acting insulin. So if your post-breakfast sugars are normal, it means the amount of insulin you've taken before breakfast is correct for you. If your postprandial blood sugars are high, it means the amount of insulin you've taken before breakfast was not enough for you. If your postprandial sugars are low, or if you have a low sugar anytime between breakfast and lunch, it means the morning insulin dose was a little bit more for you. After lunch, this is again very similar. If your after lunch blood sugars are normal, it means the amount of insulin you've taken before your lunch was actually sufficient. If after lunch your sugars are more than 180, so that's high, that means the amount of insulin you've taken before lunch was not enough. And after lunch or evening or before dinner, anytime between lunch and dinner, if you have a low blood sugar in this 6-hour window, means the amount of insulin you've taken with lunch is a little bit more for you. You can adjust the night insulin to control the fasting blood sugar. To control the postprandial blood sugar, we adjust the morning insulin. To control the after lunch blood sugar, we adjust the afternoon dose of insulin. So it's very, very simple. So how do we adjust insulin? Let's say your fasting blood sugar is normal. Don't make any changes to your insulin dose. Continue the same dose that you took the previous night. If your fasting blood sugar is more than 120, which is high, that means the amount of insulin you've taken the previous night is not enough. So increase your insulin dose by 2 units. So if you've taken 20, make it 22. If you've had a low sugar in the night or your fasting blood sugar is low, what you do is you reduce your night insulin by 2 units that night when you're taking it. So when you have a low sugar, let's say early morning, 5 o'clock, you correct the low sugar at that time. But when you're taking your night insulin again, the next time, you reduce it by 2 units. What about the sugars after breakfast? So if your PPBS is normal under 180, whatever insulin dose you've taken that morning, continue the same dose the next day. So that dose is sufficient for you. Don't make changes. Your PPBS is high, more than 180. If you've taken 10 units, add 2 units to it. So the next day, instead of 10 plus 2, you take 12 units to control the postprandial blood sugar. Or if you've taken 20, you make it 22. So whatever your dose of short-acting insulin is, you increase by 2 units the next day. If you have a low sugar between breakfast and lunch, that means your morning insulin was a little bit more for you, reduce that by 2 units the next day. After lunch, again, use the same principles. After lunch, your sugars are normal, under 180. Continue the same dose of insulin that you've taken in the afternoon. After lunch, if your sugars are high, more than 180, the next day when you're taking the afternoon injection, increase by 2 units. If you have a low sugar after lunch or evening or before dinner, reduce your afternoon insulin dose by 2 units. So your sugars are more, increase your insulin by 2 units. Low sugar, reduce by 2 units. Sugars are normal, continue the same dose. So if you have a low sugar, don't skip insulin, because if you skip insulin and you don't get insulin for let's say next 5 to 6 hours, then the sugars go up again. So what you want to do is correct the low sugar, take 3-4 spoons of glucose, have a snack, recheck after 15 minutes, make sure your sugars are normal, and then see when did I have a low sugar. So check the time. If you have a low sugar between breakfast and lunch, reduce your morning insulin by 2 units. If you have a low sugar between lunch and dinner, reduce your afternoon insulin by 2 units. So if you have a low sugar in the night or early morning, reduce your night insulin by 2 units. So let's take examples. Let's look at numbers and see how to adjust insulin. So let's say that the doctor has started you with insulin now. They've asked you to take 12 units with breakfast, 12 units with lunch. The 30/70 insulin is 30 units with dinner. So let's see what happens when we start adjusting insulin. So when we check our sugars after 2-3 days, our fasting is 160, post breakfast is 230, and after lunch is 240. So since the fasting is more than 120, it is high. When the fasting is high, it means the night dose is not enough. So we increase the night insulin by 2. So we've taken 30 units, so we add 2 units to that, that becomes 32. Our post breakfast and post lunch are also high, more than 180. Our post breakfast sugars are controlled by the morning insulin. Our post lunch sugars are controlled by the afternoon insulin. So we add 2 units to that also. So 12 plus 2 becomes 14. And similarly, in the afternoon, it also becomes 14. So the new insulin dose becomes 14, 14, and 32. We check the sugars again. Our fasting is 130. After breakfast, 200. After lunch is 205. So fasting is still high. So since the fasting is high, we add 2 units to the night insulin dose. So 32 becomes 34. After breakfast, after lunch, both are more than 180. When after breakfast is high, we add 2 units to the morning dose, so 14 becomes 16. After lunch is high, so we add 2 units to the afternoon dose, so 14 becomes 16 again. So when we check the sugars after another 2 days, our fasting is 118. So this is normal. So when your fasting blood sugar is normal, don't make any changes in your night insulin dose. You've got to 118 with 34 units, so continue 34 units in the night. After breakfast is 190, so when the sugars are more than 180, the morning dose needs to go up, so 16 becomes 18. After lunch is 200 again, so 16 units with lunch is not enough, so again 16 becomes 18. What happens then? Early morning, you've had a low sugar, it's 60. After breakfast, after lunch are 170, 168, which are normal. So when you have a low sugar at any time in the night or early morning, we reduce the night insulin by 2 units because it's the previous day's night insulin which has worked through the night and caused the low sugar. So don't look at the low sugar in the morning. Don't panic and skip your morning dose or half your morning dose because then your sugars will go up after breakfast or by lunchtime. So what you want to do when you have a low sugar early morning, you want to reduce your night insulin by 2 units. So 34 minus 2 becomes 32. When your morning afternoon dose stays the same. What happens next? Your fasting is normal. So you continue the same dose of night insulin. 32 continues. After breakfast is 200. So that means the morning dose is not enough. So 18 becomes 20. After lunch is 150. So you continue the afternoon insulin dose as it is, 18 continues. So what happens next? When we check our sugars, the fasting is 100. So since the fasting is normal, the night dose continues as it is, 32 remains unchanged. After breakfast, again, the sugars are 140. So this is normal. So the morning dose is sufficient for us, so 20 continues. After lunch, the sugars are 174. So this is also normal. So we're quite happy. But what happens later is in the evening, at 7 o'clock, we have a low sugar, so it is 70. So at any point of time, if there's a low sugar between lunch and dinner, remember it's because of your afternoon insulin. So since this low sugar has happened at 7 p.m., between your lunch and dinner, it means your afternoon insulin was a little more for you that day. So even though the after lunch sugars are normal, Because of the low sugar, the next day we reduce your afternoon insulin by 2 units. So 18 becomes 16. So 18 minus 2. So what happens next? Your fasting is 76. So this is normal. So the night dose continues as it is. After breakfast, it's a little more than 180. So morning dose is not enough. So 20 becomes 22. After lunch is 145. So continue the afternoon dose as it is. So when we start insulin, the dose is usually a little lower. And once we go home and start adjusting insulin, the dose gradually goes up until we reach our target blood sugars. But even after we reach our target blood sugars, there are going to be slight variations in your insulin dose because there are a lot of factors that affect our blood sugars on a day-to-day basis: sleep, stress, hormonal changes, physical activity, exercise, the kind of food we eat. And even if everything is constant every single day, there can be some changes in your insulin absorption itself on a day-to-day basis in every single person, which is why checking your sugars every 2 to 3 days and adjusting insulin helps you stay in your normal target range. So let's look at a few last minute pointers before we start adjusting insulin at home. Remember that everyone requires a different dose of insulin. So what you take is different from what your spouse takes or what your friend takes. So it doesn't matter. Don't compare your dose to someone else's dose because everyone's requirement is different. There's nothing like a maximum dose of insulin. So the insulin that controls your blood sugar is the insulin dose for you. So considering that, we don't really worry. If someone's dose is 20, someone else's dose may be 50, someone else's dose may be 70. So the requirement varies and it's quite broad. So we keep increasing the dose until we reach a normal blood sugar target. Until we reach a normal target, the dose has to go up. Otherwise, the sugars don't come under control. Once you reach the normal target, then you continue more or less the same dose of insulin, but you may still have a few changes of 4-5 units on and off based on, like I said, sleep, hormones, stress, activity, and food. Individual blood sugar targets also vary. So while we've explained in this video that we want the fasting under 120, 1.5 hours after meal under 180, it may be stricter for people who are younger. We may want the fasting under 100. We may want the post-breakfast sugars under 160. And for someone who's a little older, maybe 80 years old, the targets may be a little more relaxed. So sit with the doctor to find out what your exact targets are. The targets for those planning pregnancy and for pregnant women are entirely different. So if you're in this group of individuals, sit with us individually and we'll teach you what you need to do because the targets are very, very strict in pregnancy. The bottom line is we all need to adjust insulin at home because adjusting insulin will help us not only reach our targets, but will help us stay in our normal target range. And this keeps complications away. So good luck adjusting insulin and let's start adjusting insulin today.